Right? That scene? It's perfect. It's ridiculous. And it tells you everything you need to know about this episode in like 5 seconds. Lyle Lanley shows up, sings a song, and somehow the entire town forgets how logic works. Homer ends up training to drive a literal monorail, because of course he does. And everything spirals from there. But here's the thing. Yeah, it's hilarious. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, this is literally how scams work. Like, you ever see those crypto pump and dump schemes? Same vibe. Some random guy hypes up a coin with a bunch of buzzwords like blockchain and next gen. People get all excited, throw their money in, and then boom, it crashes. And the guy walks off with the cash. It's the same thing. Lanley is basically the crypto bro of Springfield, and everyone just eats it up. And that's what makes this episode so freaking good. It's not just funny, it's smart. Like, it's making fun of how people work, how decisions get made, and it's all wrapped up in this dumb, chaotic little story about a monorail. Honestly, it might be one of the best episodes they've ever done. So, here's how it all starts. Springfield gets this huge $3 million settlement after Mr. Burns is fined for dumping nuclear waste.
This court fines you $3 million.
Smithers, my wallet's in my right front pocket.
And naturally, the whole town loses its mind. They hold a meeting to decide how to spend the money. And let me tell you, the ideas are...
I say we invest that money back in the nuclear plant.
I like the way Snrub thinks.
Well, let's just say they're very Springfield. Someone suggests a giant escalator to nowhere. Another guy wants to build a giant billboard. And then there's Marge, good old sensible Marge, saying...
Well, surely you've all noticed the terrible condition Main Street is in.
But of course nobody listens. Dude, this isn't just some made-up cartoon thing either. Like, have you heard of Naypyidaw in Myanmar? Back in 2005, they straight up built a whole new capital city. They spent billions. Huge roads, these massive government buildings, even a zoo, and almost nobody lives there. It's like, what was the plan here? They built a city for crickets? It's wild. Imagine dropping $4 billion on a city nobody even asked for, while the rest of the country is still dealing with stuff like bad roads and power outages. That's some next-level monorail energy right there. And it's not just big, crazy projects like that either. You ever hit a pothole so bad you think your car's gonna fall apart? Meanwhile, the town's like, oh, hey, we're spending money on a new fountain downtown. Isn't it pretty? It's the same thing. Springfield's meeting feels so ridiculous, but if you think about it, it's basically how a lot of real decisions get made. Someone pitches a shiny idea, everyone jumps on it, and nobody stops to ask, does this make any sense? So, this is the part where Lyle Lanley shows up. Guy, he knows exactly what he's doing. He rolls into town with a snazzy suit, a big smile, and this ridiculous song about how a monorail is going to transform Springfield.
I swear it's Springfield's only choice. Throw up your hands and raise your voice. What's it called?
And the whole town, they eat it up. Like, no one stops to ask, hey, wait, do we even need this thing? Nope. They're just like, monorail? Sounds fancy. Let's go. And it's not just the town losing their minds here. Homer's off in his own little world, already dreaming about becoming the monorail conductor. Dude has 0 qualifications, but he's hyped. I mean, imagine someone offering to let you fly a plane after watching one YouTube tutorial and being like, yeah, I can totally do this. That's the energy Homer is bringing.
Marge, I want to be a monorail conductor.
Homer, no.
It's my lifelong dream.
Your lifelong dream was to run out on the field during a baseball game.
But honestly, this kind of thing happens all the time in real life. Like, remember Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos? She convinced investors she had this revolutionary blood testing tech. Turns out it didn't even work. But hey, she wore a turtleneck and talked like Steve Jobs, so everyone bought it. Or take crypto scams. Those guys throw around words like blockchain and decentralized, and people just start throwing money at them. They're basically modern-day Lyle Lanleys, minus the catchy songs. And don't even get me started on politicians. Every election season, there's that one candidate who promises the world free this, better that, I'll fix everything, and then, surprise, They have zero plans to actually do it. It's like people see the shiny idea and just stop thinking. Springfield, my friends, is not alone in this.
How much did you see?
Okay, so while the entire town is out here losing their minds over the monorail, Marge, bless her, starts getting suspicious. She's the only one who's like, is anyone actually looking into this guy? And of course, no one cares. Everyone's too busy hyping up Homer's new conductor hat or dreaming about how fancy the monorail's going to be. But Marge doesn't stop there. She does what no one else bothers to do. She looks into Lanley's past. And what does she find? A town that already got scammed by this guy. He built them a monorail too, and surprise, it's a total disaster. The place is practically abandoned, and the monorail's falling apart. At that point, she's like, yep, this guy's a fraud.
Mr. Cobb, what can we do?
You just better have a damn good conductor.
But does anyone listen? Nope. And here's the thing. Marge is basically every whistleblower ever. You know, the people who speak up and say, hey, something's wrong here. And everyone's just like, nah, you're overthinking it. Like Sharon Watkins at Enron. She tried to warn people about the shady stuff going on, and no one cared until it all came crashing down. Or the Challenger disaster. Engineers literally told NASA, hey, this thing isn't ready to launch. And guess what? They launched it anyway. It's like people don't want to hear the truth when they're too caught up in their own hype. And honestly, you've probably been there too. Like, you're in a group of friends and someone suggests this dumb plan, and you're the only one saying, guys, maybe we shouldn't. And instead of listening, they just tell you to chill and go along with it. That's Marge. She's the person trying to do the right thing, and instead of getting a thank you, she gets ignored. It's so frustrating, but also kind of relatable, right? So, the big day finally arrives, the monorail's inauguration. And honestly, the town's acting like this is the greatest moment in history. They've got the ribbon-cutting ceremony, everyone's all dressed up, and Homer's up there in the conductor's seat like he's about to pilot a spaceship.
All aboard!
The energy is off the charts. You'd think they were unveiling some groundbreaking technology or something, not a barely functional train that nobody needed. And then they launch it, and right away, you can tell something's off. The monorail starts going way too fast, and Homer's already panicking at the controls, yelling stuff like,
I'm trying my best.
The lever you have pulled, brakes, is not in service.
absolute chaos. The brakes don't work, the controls are useless, and now Springfield's realizing, oh, this thing's a death trap. This kind of disaster feels way too familiar, like the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. Back in 1940, they built it without accounting for how the wind would affect it. And guess what? The whole thing wobbled and twisted until it just collapsed. Or the Morandi Bridge in Italy. People were warning about it for years, saying it wasn't safe. And then it finally gave out in 2018, killing dozens. And don't even get me started on Flint, Michigan. Cutting corners and ignoring warnings? Yeah, we've seen where that leads. The crazy part is, in Springfield, this is still somehow funny because Homer saves the day. Kind of. He stops the monorail by using a giant anchor. But let's be real. In real life, you don't get a Homer moment. If your town's monorail or bridge or water system falls apart, you're not laughing about it. You're stuck dealing with the fallout. So yeah, Springfield got lucky this time. But it's such a perfect example of what happens when you let a flashy idea take over without, actually making sure it works. They put all their trust in a guy with a catchy song and ignored the one person, Marge, who was actually trying to do something smart. Sound familiar? Because it happens way more than we'd like to admit. So, after all that madness, the speeding monorail, Homer somehow stopping it with a giant anchor, and everyone barely surviving, you'd think Springfield would take a second to reflect, right? Maybe say, wow, we really screwed up there. Let's not do that again. But nah, they just go right back to their usual bullshit, like nothing even happened. $3 million gone. Their lives almost derailed, literally. And it's like, whatever. What's next?
And that was the only folly the people of Springfield ever embarked upon. Except for the popsicle stick skyscraper.
And honestly, that's so real it hurts. How many times do we see this exact same shit play out in real life? Like with environmental disasters. We all know deforestation is a huge problem, like this isn't news. But instead of fixing it, people slap a green sticker on something and call it a day. Or climate change. Every time there's a flood or wildfire, you've got everyone freaking out for a week, and then it's back to business as usual. Thoughts and prayers, and then boom, on to the next thing. Same goes for infrastructure disasters. A bridge collapses or a building fails, and people panic for a while. There's some investigation, a lot of finger pointing, maybe even a fancy press conference. But then, nothing. It's like the world's just programmed to forget about it and move on. Springfield's reaction? It's a joke, but it's also way too real. But you know who doesn't get enough credit? Marge. She saw this shit coming from a mile away. She knew Lanley was full of crap, and she actually tried to stop it. That's not easy. Being the person who's like, guys, this is a terrible idea, because, let's face it, no one wants to listen to the person who's raining on the parade. But Marge didn't back down. She fought to fix it, even when everyone else was too distracted by Homer in his stupid conductor hat. You know who Lyle Lanley totally reminds me of? Charles freaking Ponzi. Like, the guy who literally invented the Ponzi scheme. If you think Lanley was a smooth talker, wait until you hear about this dude. Back in the 1920s, Ponzi convinced thousands of people to invest in this brilliant plan to make insane profits in no time. His pitch? He claimed he'd buy and resell international postal reply coupons. Yeah, stamps! And make ridiculous amounts of money. I know, it sounds dumb now, but people ate it up. Here's how it worked. Ponzi promised insane returns, like 50% profits in just a few months. And at first, he actually delivered. But here's the trick. He wasn't making money from the coupons. He was just taking cash from new investors and using it to pay the old ones. It was literally a giant game of rob Peter to pay Paul. But no one cared because they were getting paid, and they thought they'd found the ultimate money machine. Of course, like all scams, it didn't last. By the time people started asking questions, it was too late. Ponzi had scammed his way to millions. Adjusted for inflation, it's the same formula. Big promises, flashy presentations, and absolutely zero follow-through. And the craziest part? People keep falling for this shit, then and now. Whether it's Ponzi in the 1920s or Lanley in Springfield, it's like, as long as it sounds good, people don't stop to ask, wait, does this make any sense? This episode is just genius. Like, yeah, it's hilarious, but it's also saying a lot about how people work. And by people, I mean us. Everyone gets sucked into hype. Like, you see something shiny, some guy with a smooth pitch walks in, and suddenly we're all like, hell yeah, take my money. It's so stupid, but also so true. And let's be real, the Lyle Lanleys of the world, they're everywhere. They're not just selling monorails, it's crypto scams, overpriced gadgets, or that one politician who promises everything and delivers nothing. They're all just doing the same thing, slapping some buzzwords on a bad idea and making it sound like the best thing ever.
That's the best thing I've seen in the last 6 months.
And we fall for it over and over because no one wants to be the person who says, wait a second, is this actually dumb? But then you've got Marge, sweet, underrated Marge, out here like, guys, this is such a bad idea. And of course, no one listens to her, which is exactly how it goes in real life, right? Like, you've got the one person who's actually paying attention, asking the real questions, and everyone else is too hyped to care. It's frustrating as hell, but honestly, we all need to be a little more like Marge. The world would be way less of a mess if we actually listened to the Marges. So yeah, next time you see some shiny new thing, whether it's a sketchy product, some big promise, or whatever, just think about Springfield. Think about Homer crashing a monorail and ask yourself, is this my Lyle Lanley moment? Because if it is, maybe it's time to pull a Marge and actually call it out. Or at least, avoid ending up on the monorail when it all goes to shit.